done. Is he on? Yep, he's on now. You know, I don't think Jesus would even like this whole Christmas party where we're spending a ton of money on junk we know we're gonna throw away. Jesus would want us to be happy. Jessica, your tree is bigger than some of the boxes homeless people live in. Proverbs 15:27. The greedy bring ruin to household, but the one who hates bribes will live. There are no bribes. This is Christmas. It's just, you're missing the point. The point is greed is bad. Hi, hello, my name's Token, and welcome back to the Devil's Advocates podcast. If you haven't been here before, I basically make video essays or just videos on things that I find interesting. Today's video is going to be about how Christmas isn't about Christmas. I'm going to go into the origins of Christmas, Christmas in relation to religion, Christmas in relation to the commercial version of it, and other general misleading facts about Christmas and or myths. So, what's the origin of Christmas? Where did Santa Claus come from? Whenever I was researching for this video, I was actually very surprised to find that the history among Christmas was slightly vague. Not necessarily that we don't know how it came about. We know about generally how it came about. Christmas started off as essentially adapting the winter solstice for the birth of Jesus Christ originally. You don't have to be necessarily religious to agree that a lot of people think a guy named Jesus was very influential. I'm not even religious that I can say that. I mean, Christ, speak of the devil, we separate our times by after this dude. Now, it didn't start off, obviously, as, oh yes, Christmas, we're gonna give each other all of these gifts, and we're gonna have this guy named Santa Claus walk around. Christmas was kind of like Mardi Gras. Like, from one of my sources today, they even say, they directly compare the drunken celebrations of Christmas with Mardi Gras. Not only was Christmas a somewhat drunk Mardi Gras, but the entire nature of Christmas and how it should be celebrated is a lot different than what we do today. I really enjoyed learning about this because Christmas was kind of like anti-capitalist. One of the earlier traditions regarding Christmas that's, slightly anti-capitalist that I feel like would be natural to bring up in this conversation is this Lord of Misrule tradition. And in this tradition, each year, a beggar or student would be crowned the Lord of Misrule, and eager celebrants played the part of his subjects. The poor would go to the houses of the rich and demand their best food and drink. If owners failed to comply, their visitors would most likely terrorize them with mischief. Christmas became the time of year when the upper class could repay their real or imagined debts to society by entertaining less fortunate citizens. I say we bring back the true meaning of Christmas spirit. Santa Claus was originally a monk, which that's not Christian. I'm not gonna say that's a bad thing or anything, but that is a conflicting ideology with the whole, Christmas is mainly a Christian, holiday, yada yada yada. Okay, well, your big old guy is a monk. But so Santa Claus was originally a monk named Saint Nicholas, born in Turkey. And he was known for traveling and giving away his wealth to help the poor and sick. Now I'm going to pivot more into Christmas in relation to religion. Now, as I've stated before, I'm not necessarily a religious person. I've mentioned this in several of my videos, but I do feel like if I'm going to make a video about a religious holiday, I'm going to have to go into the section of its religious backstory. I'm not going to give this an in-depth religious review of well, this is how it does fit this facet of Christianity, this facet of Christianity. There's so many different things. The Bible is a very long book. And if I'm going to sit here and be like, here's every single way in which Christmas is antithetical to its entire purpose by going through every single quote in the Bible, I think this would be possibly longer than the time Jimmy sawed through a plastic table with 1,000 plastic knives. I'm too employed for that. I am primarily focusing on greed in relation to religion and Christmas. And I know not everyone's going to be like, well, Christmas is about buying gifts for other people. It's not about yourself. It's about this, and that. But that lacks critical thought. Like, let's take stockings, for example. I don't see the purpose of them. I know it's the point of, oh, it's Christmas, it's Santa, he's coming, he's filling the stockings. If you're a bad kid, you'll get coal. The only time I see stockings as possibly useful pieces in relation to Christmas is if they're filled with coal. Not because I want them to be, but because the only thing that would leave that substantial of an impact that's often left in a Christmas stocking would be coal. I don't think anything you get in a Christmas stocking is useful. For me personally, when it came to Christmas stockings and Christmas overall, it was usually just like a bunch of candy. And there's nothing wrong with candy, but also you don't need to buy a sock to put candy in. The message generally, if you're gonna go very literally when it comes to religion and Christmas, is that it is Jesus's birthday, or when he was born, and you're celebrating the birth of Jesus Christ. Everyone can celebrate their birthday a little differently, but I generally say the guy who was friends with a bunch of sex workers and several different types of people and lived very modestly would say that he wouldn't want his birthday party to be ooh, let's spend a ton of money on things people don't need. I don't think he's coming out, he's on the manger, he's like, Mary, where are my gold bands? Because if we're going to talk about it being just a celebration of his birthday, I think he would much rather somebody go out and, volunteer, do something better or more productive with their time to be able to help society, rather than spend a bunch of money on paper that's going to be thrown out of the window in 5 minutes anyways. Proverbs 15:27. The greedy bring ruin to their households, but the one who hates bribes will live. Mass overconsumption of it. I know not every single individual goes all out for Christmas, but there are those families that literally you look up, it's the middle of the night, you're like, it's the night before the 1st of December. I can't wait for the holiday season. I'm so excited. And then you open your curtains and then you get blasted by Christmas lights because it seems like you're about to get sunburned from the LED light bulbs across the street. That's so much money just for once a month your house to look like that. Again, not to say you can't celebrate at least slightly, I think it's fine, but there are people who have Christmas addictions. I knew somebody who would spend almost enough for a month's worth of rent to be able to house all of their Christmas decorations year round because they didn't have enough room in their actual house. That is not, I don't think whenever Jesus was born, he thought, wow, this stable is filled to the brim with Christmas lights. No, he thought it probably smelled I know some people are gonna be like, oh, well, people can use their money how they want. That has nothing to do with our religion and Christianity and yada yada yada. That's true, but also that negates the fact that one aspect of religion a lot of times is tithing. If you don't know what tithing is, you saying you're gonna give this amount of money every time you go to church to be able to help the church and help God, because if you give money to them, then you're going to help the church and you're helping God's plan. Whatever. At least in the churches that I attended, it was pretty expected for you to tithe your money. So this is not me saying that people should be giving money to God or churches or specific religions or anything of the like. That's entirely your choice. I wouldn't do it personally because I don't believe in God like that, but I'm not necessarily saying you shouldn't ever tithe or you should. It's your life. You do what you want. And also when I'm talking about greed in relation to religion and gift giving, I'm talking about ludicrous amounts of money put into a Yeah. The origin of Christmas, as I mentioned before, was more or less like a drunken Mardi Gras party. It was more similar to Mardi Gras originally, with the drunken antics and behaviors of punishing the rich and whatnot. I would say that's more accurate to the biblically accurate Jesus. Even the commercialized version of it doesn't match the origins of Christmas itself entirely outside of religion. So I know you're gonna be like, well, how are you going to analyze Christmas if not by religion? And to that I say, I am using media! Focus more on the story of Santa Claus in relation to the sentiment of Christmas throughout Christmas media overall. Originally, this idea of materialism in relation to Christmas wasn't even widely accepted at first by Americans. I know, America? Not wanting to consume everything for every 5 seconds? The main shifting point was when, in 1874, Macy's initiated the promotion of manufactured goods with a windows display containing tens of thousands of dollars of imported dolls. Between 1880 and 1920, department stores intensified this publicity, both with advertising and with store displays. But Americans remained uneasy about the message of materialism in their self-serving promotions. And, of course, Santa Claus also served to decontaminate the commercial character of the commodities. Together, these promotions help Americans get into the spirit of Christmas. So in other words, they debased Santa, at least the origins of Santa, to be able to bring this consumerist culture related to Christmas to light, which I think that's really weird, to be like, oh yes, we're gonna actually take this guy that was really well known for giving his money away and helping the sick and poor all of the time. Yeah, let's make him like our capitalist. I'm gonna talk about the movie that made the most money that is a Christmas movie. And if you don't know what that is, it is How the Grinch Stole Christmas. That's right. The movie about how, maybe Christmas isn't about all of what's in a store. Maybe it's about something more. The entire message of it, it does fit with the spirit of Christmas. I'm not saying that movie doesn't, but the behaviors of Americans and or just individuals in relation to Christmas doesn't fit the Christmas spirit. Because if you'd watch the movie, you'd realize he literally was like, oh, it's not about their little bags or whatever. They're still gonna be happy without the gifts. I'm not saying don't ever buy anything for anyone, but I really don't think it's necessary to have an entire extra house to house your Christmas decorations. Not only is this consumerism antithetical to the origins of Christmas, it's also bad for us. I'm talking about Christmas injuries. That's right, like whenever you fall, if you're gonna go do this and yada 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 yada. But every year, an estimated 16,000 people head to the hospital for holiday decor related injuries across the United States. About 22% of those estimated ER trips involved wounds from cuts with a sharp object. In many of the observed cases, the culprit was glass ornaments. Of more than 7,000 actual hospital trips, and since 2004, there have been just 2 recorded deaths in relation to hospital incidents. I know some of it is just genuinely like, oh, well, they forgot to water it, so their house started to catch on fire or something because of the lights. Some of it is just that. But I am certain there are people who have like 8-foot tall trees, and then they have to get on a ladder or something to go and put the bauble on the tree. And arguably, if you didn't have the 8-foot tall tree, you wouldn't have to worry about decorating every single one of the foot on it. If you didn't have the 8-foot tree, you wouldn't have to worry about falling from decorating it. There's several different statistics in relation to, Christmas and spending money. This one that I'm going to quote in reference to the profits of department stores during Christmas time. The estimated retail sales for the nation's department stores in December 2024 was $5.9 billion. But I do have this one video about how far I think $1 billion can go, and the footnotes for that, spoiler alert for my video, if you watch that, it would take about like 50 years-ish, like 40, 50-ish years to solve world hunger and homelessness, given $1 billion that were applied. Else to say, $5.9 billion, that could solve world hunger a lot quicker than the $1 billion in which I referenced. I believe the origins of Christmas, even outside of religion, is antithetical to the commercialized version of religion today, with the focus primarily on, kind of being drunk and celebrating with other people and, kind of taking one out on the rich. I'm going to go into other facts about how Christmas is misrepresented, aka some of it's just myths. A lot of this section of the video is going to be very source heavy. I'm going to say every single thing that I say in this section is from some source. So, the 12 Days of Christmas song, I'm assuming you know what that one is. And a partridge in a pear tree. That song. It's actually not before Christmas. Surprise! No. So the 12 Days of Christmas is actually after Christmas, if you didn't know that. It starts on Christmas Day and leads to Twelfth Night celebration, which is a Christian festival, if you don't know that. I don't know that, and I was raised a Christian. Not only were you punished for celebrating Christmas or other types of Christmas celebration, the feast from Christmas used to be banned. Yeah, you heard me right. That Who Hash feast from the Grinch Who Stole Christmas? It wouldn't have even existed, at least in the 1600s, that's for sure. The feast days of Christmas used to be banned in 1647 in Britain because of the Puritan values, which believed it should have been a period of fasting instead of a feasting time. But Santa's red suit, it's actually a myth because it did not originate from Coca-Cola. There have been other depictions of Santa Claus being in a red suit before Coca-Cola. Now, is that to say they weren't highly influential? No, they were highly influential in popularizing it, but it's not the first time that people are like, let's put Santa in some red. Now, whenever I was researching for this section of the video, I actually learned about some myths that I didn't even know existed in relation to Christmas, because who is going to tell me that people thought New Zealanders put a kiwi bird on the top of their tree? There had been a myth that New Zealanders were putting a kiwi bird as the star at the top of their Christmas tree, but that's false, obviously. And as I mentioned earlier in the video, Santa Claus is not always, that sweet old guy who has a bunch of cookies and milk whenever he comes and delivers presents. In different parts of not the country, in different places it can range from him getting beer instead of milk, mince pies, porridge, and pudding. There's a variety. He may, dare I say, he might get a little turned. Although, one could say Santa Claus already got turned behind the wheel a couple of too many times, because we do have Grandma got run over by a reindeer. I wonder how many beers in he was when he decided he was going to get a DUI. Now, the next factor that I'm going to talk about does kind of bring back to the origin, at least commercially, of Christmas, because it is around the origins of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Or at least for me personally, whenever I think of Rudolph, I think of, that little claymation movie of him where he's just like, oh, these people bully me, but I am here with this random guy who wants to be a dentist. Why was that even a section of the movie? Yeah, you're gonna be stuck with this other misfit guy, but he wants to be a dentist. What's wrong with you? I don't know, man, I just want clean teeth. But so Rudolph was not originally from that movie. He actually started as a gimmick in promotional booklets by a company so that they could get better marketing and whatnot. He was actually one of the only commercialized part of Christmas, historically speaking, is Rudolph. There's different Christmas traditions in various different places, and so some of them are just completely unrelated whatsoever to the Western version of it's about love and family, and we need to buy gifts and spend so much money on people for no reason. No, sometimes it's actually kind of spooky. Not to say it's the worst or whatever, but there's definitely different perceptions. And I would say generally the majority of these are slightly spooky based. Krampus is a real holiday. It's not just that one weird off movie. No, this is a real tradition. So the eve of St. Nicholas, the 5th of December, is I'm gonna butcher this so bad. Krambuschnacht. Hordes of Krampuses march through alpine towns in elaborate, sinister costumes. In recent years, the Krampus's tendencies to go on drunken rampages. Let's go back to those drunk Christmas roots. Getting in fights and destroying property has become a bit of a problem. So, in other words, Krampus actually knows the original meaning of Christmas. In Austria and Bavaria, there is Frau Perze, and Frau is a witch who comes to see who has been naughty or nice. She cuts the bellies of bad children and stuffs their corpses with straw. In Iceland, there is a giant ogre who comes out and hunts children named Grilla. She cooks those children that she hunts in a stew during the Christmas time. In Greece, Bulgaria, Serbia, and Turkey, there is the Kalakanzari goblins who are underground throughout the rest of the year, and they come out during the Christmas time to take a break from essentially trying to cause the apocalypse. So while that's not necessarily bad, because it's not like they're going out and, cutting your stomach and putting you into a stew, unlike Grilla, they are generally throughout the years trying to, cause the apocalypse in France, Belgium, Switzerland. A guy named Pierre Hussard and his wife, they find kids and then they cut them up and hide their bodies. And Saint Nick, this is essentially the lore behind it. Saint Nick, aka Santa Claus, discovers this and essentially has him be his butler, worker. You know what I mean? He's forced into necessary bondage by Santa Claus to work by his side to make up for the fact that he's essentially killed a bunch of children and cut them up and whatnot. And if a child behaves badly and whatnot, he is responsible for reprimanding them. Alright, and that's going to be the end of the video today, you guys. I really hope you enjoyed. Today, we went over how Christmas isn't really about Christmas. Origins of Christmas, both religious and commercially. Christmas in relation to religion and how it's antithetical to the origins of Christmas religiously. Christmas in relation to the commercial origins and how it is antithetical to even its commercial origins. And other misleading facts about Christmas, which even feature different countries and how they celebrate Christmas and how their Saint Nick can be a lot different than ours, even scary. I'm Token, this is Theta. I hope you enjoyed watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you all later. Token to debate in this purgatory based call in to create my number awaits.